We are watching two tropical systems out in the Atlantic this morning. One is a powerful hurricane, and that is Hurricane Humberto. It's a Category 4 storm, well on its way to becoming a Category 5 sometime today. The other is PTC-9, which stands for Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. This is well on its way to becoming Imelda sometime this weekend. So we got to figure out a lot with these two storm systems. The big focus will be future Imelda. Will it make a landfall? Will it not? Will it come close enough to the southeast coastline regardless to bring impacts? We're going to cover everything in this video. Utilize those timestamps, folks. My videos can be very long, but it's jammed-packed full of information that you most likely are looking for. So we'll go over model guidance. We'll speak on steering currents. What can promote strengthening. We'll go over impacts as far as what we know right now, and we just got you covered. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. Let's make sure this is going to work, and it is. So let's take a broad look at the Atlantic, and I'm doing this because I want you guys to really see how close these two storm systems are to one another. So this is Hurricane Humberto right here. It's a Category 4. 145 mile per hour hurricane as of the 5 a.m. update. And this is PTC-9. Looks much better this morning compared to any time yesterday. And I do think we're starting to get a defined low-level circulation with this storm system now, but we're seeing a huge area of shower and thunderstorm action, convection across the greater Antilles, getting into Turks, Caicos Islands, the southeast Bahama Islands, and this thing is looking much more healthy this morning for sure. And we'll take a zoomed in look at it here in a second. So these are both of the storm systems, and it's pretty wild how close they are to one another, and this could play a key factor in us trying to figure out which way especially Imelda goes over the next several days. So let's move forward. Let's go over the latest from the National Hurricane Center. For both systems, as far as current conditions, Humberto, a 145 mile per hour Category 4 hurricane moving west at about 7 miles per hour. It's pretty strong, 940 millibars. And then we got PTC-9, 35 mile per hour storm system, 1007 millibars, and moving northwest at about 8 miles per hour. So let's dive deep into Imelda, and we'll start off by taking future Imelda, I would say, not technically named that yet, but let's take a closer look. So, you know, it's hard to figure out where the actual low-level circulation of this system is, if there is one. If there is a low-level circulation, which is very important, that's like the heart and soul of these tropical systems, it's probably, let's try to draw on this, you might not see it very well, it's probably somewhere into here, underneath this mid-level convection. You can see the blow-ups and the colors here on your screen, sort of the blacks and the whites and some splashes of pink embedded in that. It indicates colder cloud tops, which means we have stronger storm action, taller updrafts. The taller up it gets, the colder it gets in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and this is reflected by the colors you see on your screen. If you look very closely, and listen, this is not going to be easy to see, but you can see a little bit of movement going like this and like that, little bit over here too, and even right here. So there is a cyclonic low-level circulation with this system. This tells me that this thing is probably about to slowly start to really organize, truly become a tropical cyclone. So that's just a closer look at it. Like I said, this thing is kind of all over the place over areas of Cuba, you know, southern Bahama Islands, but this thing will gradually move in this general direction over the next 24 hours. So we'll move past this. Let's go over the latest from the National Hurricane Center with PTC-9, future Imelda. Right now, 35 mile per hour system. All these little blue areas you see here, these are tropical storm warnings up for areas of the Bahamas. Some of the watches have been upgraded to warnings now in the northern Bahamas. Should become a tropical storm sometime tonight. It says 2 a.m. Sunday. That will actually make it be named Imelda, right? And then it'll become a 45 mile per hour tropical storm. Slow, gradual strengthening. And then by the time it gets to the northern areas of the Bahamas, 60 mile per hour mid-grade tropical storm. And then this is when the cone really gets weird. Forecast to become a hurricane by the time we get into sometime Monday night into Tuesday morning, Category 1 storm. I think this has the potential to become a Category 2 hurricane. But just because it becomes a Category 2 hurricane, that doesn't mean it's going to make a landfall. So just, keep that in mind. But I think that this could overachieve compared to the National Hurricane Center forecast as far as strength. But you got areas of Georgia, heck, even extreme northeast Florida, half of South Carolina, a portion of southeast North Carolina still in this cone. Now remember, the cone is not the impact cone. Okay, so if you're in Columbia or Charlotte or Fayetteville and Raleigh, Greenville, you're thinking, or the Outer Banks thinking, man, we're not going to get anything now. That's not what this means. This is where the center of the storm system could go, folks. The center of the storm. So right now, you can see how it kind of does a loop. And sometime Tuesday night, Wednesday morning of next week, sort of stalls and doesn't move a whole lot from 2 a.m. Wednesday to say 2 a.m. Thursday. That's a 24-hour period. So, and I'm going to tell you why it's kind of moved. If you tuned into last night's video, for example, you're thinking probably, well, this cone was way over here. We're going to speak on why there's been a little bit of a shift east. Okay, so this is the latest cone from the National Hurricane Center. Let's go over all model guides. So this is the latest Euro. The 06Z Euro has not ran yet. It's probably about to run in the next hour. So we have to go over the OOZ. So here it comes. We're going to start off for tomorrow morning, 1,005 millibar low, bringing a lot of messy tropical conditions across the Bahamas. And then we get into Monday morning. This gets north of the Bahamas, 1,003 millibar low. And listen, I want to note this. There's already a lot of shower and storm action. We're going to speak on why, well ahead of the actual tropical system itself. So you're seeing all this tropical moisture into the Carolinas, and then we start to get into Monday night. Okay, 1,000 millibar low, and then the Euro, as we're getting into Tuesday, this is probably a hurricane at this point. And then we get into Tuesday afternoon, 984, that's probably a Category 1 hurricane or so. Probably a higher end Category 1, but you can see the meat kind of the worst of the storm is along the coastline or just offshore. Still a lot of moisture moving inland, but not near as much. And then this thing kind of stalls out Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and then it begins to drift away. Okay, so that's the Euro. Good news, right? What about the GFS? GFS started trending this way yesterday. GFS, 1,000 millibar low through the Bahamas. This is a strengthening tropical storm. It really wants this to almost get to hurricane strength by the time it's leaving the Bahamas. So he has a 987 millibar low, and then a 986 Monday morning. And then by the time we get into Tuesday morning, this is a flat out a Category 2 hurricane based purely off millibar. But a lot of moisture getting tossed inland. Not super heavy stuff, but certainly a big plume of moisture. And then we get into sort of Tuesday PM. It's a 967 millibar low. One would argue, hey, is that a major hurricane? And like I said in last night's video, I would not rule out a major Category 3 hurricane. But that doesn't mean that a major Category 3 hurricane is going to make a landfall. So this is getting into Tuesday evening, and it moves away. And it never truly gets close enough to bring, I would say, catastrophic impact. Some of these crazy flooding, rainfall totals we've been seeing. But listen, this could change. The weird thing to me, and let's see if we have, before I get into this, we do not. The weird thing to me is the Euro AI model has been showing that scenario that I just showed you off the GFS and the Euro for the last few days. It's been liking the idea of doing this number right here, just kind of looping out. So you would think, okay, well, the Euro AI model is leading the pack, and I would agree. But watch what the latest one from overnight does. Same thing, tropical storm going through the Bahamas tomorrow through Monday morning. This deepens into a Category 1 hurricane sometime Monday night into Tuesday morning. And we have a 978 millibar low sometime Tuesday just off the Georgia coastline. This is pretty close. I look at a run prior to that, it's further offshore. This one's closer and stronger. And then we get into Tuesday PM. It's close enough now. This is probably a Category 2 hurricane. Close enough now, bringing widespread impacts along the South Carolina, Georgia coastline. And then it kind of just slowly grinds the northern edge of the system, which is probably going to be the worst side of this tropical system, along the South Carolina coastline. It stalls it out. And then we get into Thursday morning and finally makes landfall. So if the Euro AI model is correct, we don't know if it is, not a forecast, that would bring definitely significant impacts. We'll just leave it at that terminology, right? And then brings a lot of rain inland. So it's wild to me that, all the models now, global models at least, are liking the idea of this kind of turning before bringing any kind of crazy impacts. But now the Euro AI model, which was saying that all along, is a little bit closer. Now the 06Z Euro AI model is probably about to run shortly. In fact, I'm going to try to pull it up on the fly here. I just don't think that we are far enough along for it to be up yet. I always like to try, no, it's not. So I always like to try to get you the most up-to-date information, but timing doesn't always work out with that. Now the Canadian model has been showing a scenario where it doesn't like a full-fledged landfall more times than not over the last few days. But here it comes, Canadian, which isn't the best tropical model, but I don't want anybody thinking that I'm not showing you certain models just because it doesn't show a landfall. There's people that believe that. It's not the case. You guys know that's been tuning in for a while that I show everything. But 997, tropical storm as it's getting north of the Bahamas. And then it does. The Canadian model gets close enough as a Category 1 hurricane Tuesday morning. When you start to see some of these yellows and reds and orange, this is significant impacts. It gets close enough to hit the Carolina coastline with significant rainfall and winds. But then this eventually drifts away also. Now the Icon, which some people are saying has been leading the way with this storm system, hard to say that it's led the way if we don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? But the Icon really gets this going. It's not as dramatic with the strengthening as it was, say, a few runs back over the last several ones, but this gets into a tropical storm and then a flat-out hurricane Category 1 or 2 status Monday night into Tuesday morning. It's off the coastline, and it does throw a lot of rainfall into the Carolinas and areas of Virginia, maybe Georgia, but then it drifts away. Gets pulled by Humberto, which we'll talk more on later in the video. But I will tell you that it is further north, turning further north than the run prior to this. This is the run prior to this. So it's kind of moved north. Maybe there's like a middle ground meeting. Now, what about the latest hurricane models? And I do think, yeah, we only have OOZ, which is fine. That's still the latest information. 06Z really hasn't got going yet. So this is the H-Wharf model. Has a strengthening tropical storm through the northern Bahamas tomorrow morning. It's pretty wild. I mean, that's tomorrow. And it has this becoming a hurricane by the time this gets just north of the Bahamas. It's 979 off this hurricane model. I mean, that's the east coast of Florida. It's very close. And then this continues, doesn't strengthen a whole lot. But still, as we're getting into Monday evening, it wants to bring a ton of impacts along the Georgia, especially South Carolina coastline and inland. I mean, look, this is Columbia right here. But it doesn't really make a landfall until like Tuesday p.m. and just kind of grinds along and hangs out along the South Carolina coastline, which would bring significant impacts. And then just hangs out off the coast most of the work week next week. The HMON model, same thing, strengthening tropical system through the northern Bahamas. And then we get into Monday morning. This is a hurricane at this point, based off millibar. Same thing. We get into the sub 980 range. That's getting close to Category 2 status. Look at these rain bands slashing the Georgia and South Carolina coastline. Then this makes landfall as a Category 1 or 2 hurricane around Savannah, Beaufort, Hilton Head, something like that. Sometime, early Tuesday morning. Not a forecast. What about the HFA model? I believe that's what this is. Let's see. Yeah, HFA model. Strong tropical storm strengthening through the Bahamas. Kind of glitching a little bit. It's kind of weird. It's going back and forth. Monday morning, we got pretty much a hurricane at this point. We get into Tuesday morning. Look how close it is to the Georgia coastline. Heck, even the far northeastern sections of Florida. And this just kind of spins around off the Georgia coastline into Tuesday night. We get into Wednesday morning, and this thing just gets jammed. And finally, it detaches and brings impacts into South Carolina, and then finally makes landfall sometime Wednesday night. HFB model. Strengthening tropical system. Heck, it has this almost a hurricane by the time we get to northern Bahamas, like late tomorrow night. And then we get into Tuesday morning. This is a 972 millibar low off this run. That's a Category 2 hurricane. And then it almost deepens it into a Category 3, 963. I mean, that's strong, folks. But it just stalls it right off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. And then it kind of moves northeast, but not far enough away to stop bringing impacts along the Carolina coastline. So what about the Euro ensemble? It makes up 51 members, so you're going to see a lot of L's, and some of these continue to jolt north pretty fast. So some of these members got a landfall scenario by Tuesday morning. And there's a lot right in this area that are kind of just meandering their way north. And then there's some that you see right here that get pulled by the yank of Hurricane Humberto. So some of these kind of go like this and like that and like this and don't even get close to really bringing any significant impacts to the southeast coastline. So we got that, and then we got the latest Google DeepMind models, and I'll be honest, these have actually trended a little bit more towards the coastline. But still, there's a lot of members here to get very close, if not make a landfall along the Georgia, South Carolina coastline. And these hills just basically meander around these scenarios, if you will. Some of them jolt to the east pretty fast, and there's a lot of them that just are, hanging out in this area. Okay, some making landfall, some kind of scooting out like this, which we want to see. So, yeah. So let's talk about an environment that could promote strengthening. So, what's the ceiling of this tropical system, which is Imelda? For some reason, I keep wanting to say almost like Arlene or something. I don't know why. I've actually had to start the video over multiple times because I've said that, or almost have said it, but it's Imelda. So hopefully I don't trip myself up. But what about the conditions that could support a strengthening tropical system? Let's draw on this a little bit. So first off, our tropical system is right here at this moment, which, by the way, is over sea surface temperatures. I know this is in Celsius. You're like thinking, man, it's 29 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty cold. This is in Celsius, so 28, 29, 30 degrees Celsius. Convert that to Fahrenheit. That's like the mid, in some cases, upper 80s. So this system is literally going to roll through this region more than likely. It's literally going to take the path right up the Gulf Stream. So it's going to be tapping into some very warm waters into this area right here. That's the Gulf Stream. So one thing that's working for the strengthening of this system is very warm waters off the coast of Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. So check that off the box for an ingredient that would support a strengthening tropical system. The next thing you look at, and I'm going to make the little cursor a little bit bigger here. Yeah, that's good. Our tropical system, and this is the GFS for Sunday morning, saying this is going to be around 1,000 millibar low down here at the bottom of your screen, cruising through the Bahamas. So this is flow at 250 millibars. So winds about 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. So the areas you see in blue and green and yellowish colors, those are faster flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere, right? So you're going to see some flow kind of coming down here, and then it kind of goes like this, and then it kind of dramatically goes up like that north of Imelda. Okay, so this flow that kind of is diving down right here, what's causing this flow in general, right? Well, you got basically, I'm going to do a check mark here, an upper level trough that is creating the flow, and the flow around it is going around this upper trough, kind of digging in like this, if that makes sense. So the flow is kind of going around that feature. So the flow right here is probably going to try to, prevent any kind of rapid or just moderate intensification in the shorter term. Kind of a slow, gradual intensification process in the next day or two, in my opinion. Okay, because some dry air is going to kind of come down here and really get involved into the system, at least try to. Now, one thing that's working for the system is all the flow getting dispersed away in the upper levels, like above the system. We call that divergence aloft. So basically, on the northern side of the system, we have a very favorable upper wind pattern. It's not necessarily super unfavorable down here, but there's some dry air getting pulled into the system. I'll show you a better representation of that here in a second. So in this area, we have an environment for a lot of rising air. Rising air means that we can have shower and storm action, rain, and we know tropical systems like that. So that is going to make this entire area right here an atmosphere favorable for a lot of moisture, well out ahead of Imelda itself, kind of surging right into the eastern Carolinas potentially. And, we continue to move forward here. And what's wild to me is as we are starting to get, say, into Tuesday morning, you're going to notice how this goes. Well, let's start off here. So tomorrow morning, we got 1,000 millibar low. And by the time we get into Tuesday morning, we have a 972 millibar low. Drops over 25 millibars. It's almost a Category 2 hurricane. In this case, it probably would be. So what is the environment at this point? Same thing. Tons of air being dispersed outward like this, like that. And I would say the environment isn't as unfavorable down here, even though we do have some flow, creating some wind shear, allowing for some dry air to get to the bottom edge of the storm. working on the southern edge of the storm, it's still kind of going outward like this. And a little bit of flow kind of working up against the storm system right here. But in general, I would say a lot more areas of the storm, you got a lot more of an outflow working away from the storm system itself. This could create an environment right into here when you mix this favorable upper wind pattern with it sitting over the Gulf Stream for it to really intensify off the coast of the southeast and probably scare a lot of people regardless of landfall or not. So why does a lot of disbursement of air away from the storm in the upper levels help these systems? Well, when you get a disbursement of air away from the system, this allows for more air to rise through the system. That gets pushed away, then it's a continuous cycle. If you got a continuous cycle of rising air, rising air allows for the sustaining and firing of convection, shower and storm activity. Shower and storm activity is, well, moist air. Tropical systems like moist air. Therefore, these systems can wrap up well and cocoon the low-level circulation. And therefore, you could get a moderate to rapidly intensifying tropical system. Not saying that's what's going to happen, but I would not rule it out. So, the next thing I'll show you is dry and moist air. And this is a great example of what I just showed you, right? So we're going to kind of fast forward it into tomorrow evening. Remember when I was talking about dry air just a second ago in this area? Well, here it is, trying to wrap up into kind of the bottom flank of the storm. But on this run of the GFS, honestly, it is cocooned very well already with dry air. And to be completely honest with you, the dry air really isn't affecting the system too much as we get over the next couple days. But once again, you see all this green here? That's moist air, basically rainfall, shower, and storm activity surging out ahead, way ahead of the storm. So we're going to need this to trend well offshore to not bring any significant impacts, because you have sort of this pre-event setting up. And you can call the rainfall that's happening right now across the Carolinas, maybe Georgia, Virginia, as kind of a pre-event also. I mean, we've picked up over an inch of rain at my house over the last 24 hours. But this is a big plume of moisture. And we already showed you that on what model guide showed. Big plume of moisture well ahead from the actual center of the storm, which is down here. So you continue to move forward here. This thing is fully wrapped up at this point. So even though you got a lot of dry air coming down into the system, right, like at the southern edge of the system, if you look very closely, you have a lot of green south of the low pressure. So this thing is fully wrapped up with a lot of dry air. A lot of moist air at this point. So even though you got a lot of dry air down here, it's not really getting mixed up into the actual cyclonic rotation of the system. But look at this huge plume of moisture well north of the system. And that is because we have such of disbursement of air through this area, allowing for an environment for a lot of shower and storm activity. So even though the system races off away, I think we're going to get a lot of rain potential. But, you know, if this continues to trend away, or we continue to have just more confidence of that, then maybe not as much rain. But we got to continue to watch. This, you know, talking about rainfall, you know, what's wild is this morning we're actually getting an increase in rainfall totals per the Weather Prediction Center. They're going for over 10 inches of rain in Charleston now, 7 to 8 in Myrtle Beach, 5 to 6 in Florence, 4 to 5 in Columbia. And these are a couple other areas also. I mean, once you start to get into the kind of these kind of yellowish, orange, brownish colors right here between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, that's over a foot of rain that is forecast. And then we go up the road to North Carolina, southeast North Carolina, it certainly looks to be the spot. You know, anywhere from 4 to as much as 10 inches of rain. Get up to Raleigh, Greensboro, Virginia Beach, not as much, but this could change, guys. A lot. And if we're talking about, you know, wind totals, this is the chances to see tropical storm force winds, basically winds over 40 miles per hour. And the winds could still be a lot. I mean, you see the coastline right here of Georgia, South Carolina, heck, even Florida and the southeast North Carolina. I mean, that's those yellow areas, that's a 30 to 40% chance to see winds at 40 miles per hour or higher. And this is between now and the next, I believe, 5 days. Yeah. So, I know a lot of people are focusing in on rain, and I think that will be the biggest impacts, but you know, we certainly need to watch out for winds too. And this all depends on how close this system gets. But this is the time frame of the tropical storm force wind gusts. You know, pause the screen if you need to. So I do want to show some love to Humberto, and then we'll round the video off with steering currents. And that'll be a part of the video where we kind of geek out with you guys a lot. So this is Humberto, 145 mile per hour Powerful Category 4 hurricane as of the 5 a.m. update, coming up on the 8 a.m. update here in the next hour or so. A very strong storm system. And here's the latest cone from this. The sun's starting to rise on it. 145 mile per hour storm forecast to become a Category 5 sometime tonight. Wild stuff. We are, I believe, our second Category 5 hurricane of the season. Luckily, this is not going to make landfall. Now, we need to watch Bermuda, but I don't think it'll make landfall in Bermuda as a Category 5. Forecast to weaken back into a Category 4. Still a powerful hurricane by the end of this weekend. Then by the time we get into early next week, still a Category 4. Bermuda, you are in the cone. This still means that the center of the storm can move over you guys. So you're still well entrenched into that cone right now. I think you'll get impacts regardless with such a strong hurricane. And unfortunately, you guys being on the west side of the storm instead of the east side of the storm with Gabrielle, you guys could definitely see more impacts with almost every tropical system always being east weighted, where the worst impacts are. So, by the time we get into, Tuesday, I would say, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, this will be making its closest pass. Is anybody in Canada in the cone? No. You guys are way up here, so that's why I really haven't mentioned you guys a whole lot. I do think it'll stay well south of you. And just to show some model runs for you guys in Bermuda, you guys are that little speck right there. And as we move forward, we get into Monday morning, we get into Tuesday morning, we get into Tuesday afternoon, and then Tuesday night. You guys are certainly close enough to be getting some impact, some outer bands, if this is what happens off the Euro. Look how close they are to one another. Okay? And then we need to watch Imelda, because Imelda later next week could bring some tropical impacts to you guys too, if it gets pulled towards y'all. What about the GFS? Same thing. We get into Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon. A little bit of a quicker progression with this system, and it's a little bit further west also. And I would say not as much widespread impacts, but you got to watch it. And then you got to watch Imelda, which turns around and brings a hurricane just south of you guys later next week. This will be two separate tropical impacts. So, we look at the Euro ensemble, and it's a little bit more concerning because you got more members getting close on the Euro ensemble for Bermuda, which is right into here. So we're going to continue to track this for you folks, and just to make sure it doesn't make any significant changes, for like Atlantic Canada. Now, if we look at the latest wind forecast, you guys in Bermuda are a lock to get tropical storm force winds. I mean, you got pretty much a 70 to 90% chance. So regardless of a direct impact, direct landfall, you guys are going to get very strong winds. In fact, if you look at winds that are capable of producing hurricane force, which is winds over 75 miles per hour, I mean, you guys in Bermuda even have like a 10 to 20% chance to see that. So, yeah. So this is the part where we'll wrap the video up, but we'll slow it down also. So these are steering currents. So what you're looking at here is the 500 millibar flow chart. So these are winds at about 18,000 feet up in the air, and this is the flow. So if you look here at these little wind barbs, like for example, I'm going to make this really small at first. Like, let's find a wind barb here. You see this wind barb right here? You see how the flag portion of it is pointing to the south? That means the winds are coming from the south. So they're kind of coming up like this, right? So that's important to kind of understand, because I don't just want to draw on the map here and not really explain it. So let's circle a couple key features on here before we dive into this. First off, we got center of high pressure right here. The flow around high pressure is working around just like this, okay? We got this feature right here. This is our upper trough diving in and kind of weakening at the same time, I would say, across the southeast. The flow around this feature is going just like that. So, the flows are kind of working in tandem today between the high pressure and the upper trough. And then you got Humberto, which is right here, being steered by the bottom flow at the bottom of this ridge. So pretty much, being steered up into this area around the western side, southwestern side of the ridge. And then we got PTC9, soon to be Imelda. Now, the flows were going like this. The flow is going like that. We kind of got this down here that's sort of far enough away from both of the flow, from both of these features. It's still feeling it. It's getting tugged, but it's not getting tugged quick. And because of that, this thing is just kind of moving around pretty slow. And it's not a very strong storm system, so it's not going to, gain latitude fast. Sometimes these stronger systems like Humberto can kind of just move just because they're so strong, kind of forward progression, right? So you continue to move forward. Before we move forward, I want to stop it here and I want to go back about 5 or 6 runs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, this is all the way back to the overnight run like last night or something, 5 runs ago. So I want you to keep your eyes on this blob right here. So remember, this is like 5 or 6 runs ago. I want you to watch how it positions itself a little bit more into this area. This is huge. So let's go all the way to the current right now run. See how that area of energy weakens a little bit and positions itself a little bit more south and southwest. That is huge. So the reason the GFS was taking this into the southeast coastline, over the last several runs, but over the last few have not, is because it was initializing this probably a little bit too strong at this time frame, which is kind of right now into early this afternoon. And it was thinking it was going to be a little bit stronger. So in that case, it would be a little bit further up in latitude where it would be feeling the flow a little bit more around this high pressure more, and probably be feeling a little bit more flow around this upper trough more. So that's why a lot of the model runs had it just kind of jolting north pretty fast and making landfall on the Carolina coastline, because the GFS several ones back thought this would be further north. Therefore, it would be picked up by steering currents by both of these features, high pressure upper trough, faster. That's not been the case. It's been a little bit weaker in the shorter term. So now we have it, where it is. Okay? So what does that mean as far as Humberto? Well, because this is moving slower, Humberto ain't, moving faster or slower. It's just continuing its progression. So because this is weaker and slower, it gives Humberto a little bit more time to not catch fully up with it, but trail it a little bit closer. Because it trails it a little bit closer, it can influence Imelda's steering currents a lot more. So we continue to move forward here, and what happens on the latest GFS is just that. This system does finally get picked up as it gains strength, kind of being steered around the western edge of this ridge and by a little bit of flow from the upper trough, mixed with the fact that this is just a stronger storm system and relatively light flow, and it's just going to gain latitude. So this thing's moving north regardless. Now remember, the actual cyclonic flow of this storm system is like this. So, as this tries to get closer, it's going to try to tug on this a little bit like that, but not quite yet. As we move forward, here it comes. Looks like it's going right towards the South Carolina coastline, but at this point, Humberto is trailing it hard. I mean, that's Humberto, that's Imelda. So remember, rotation around both of them are going just like this. Okay, same thing, just like that. Okay. So with Humberto being the dominant storm, more than likely it's going to try to yank on this a little bit. They get close enough to where they're kind of influencing each other's steering currents. I mean, I would say Imelda's probably trying to tug Humberto a little bit to the west, more than what it would probably typically go if there wasn't a tropical system right here, if that makes sense. So you continue to move forward here, and it tugs on it enough. You see how that happens here? Looks like it's heading right towards the Carolinas. Then Humberto races off and then yanks Imelda away and saves the day. Pretty wild stuff. You can see it in continuous motion here. Bang, yanks it away. And that is because of the tug, quite literally the yank from Humberto. I know that's a funny word. I've just been using it like crazy. So I hope that makes sense. So, for more of a landfall scenario, if this thing really takes off today, then it could really get some forward northerly progression, and then it could outrun the potential steering influence from Humberto trailing it. But we are trending in a direction in the shorter term that doesn't show that. But there's a lot of other small scale things to look at also. So I hope that makes sense. This stuff is wild, and we got a lot of tracking out ahead of us over the next several days. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. we'll do another video tonight and get you the latest and greatest information.